Geopolitics and Empire is joined by Etienne de la Boetie², who's the nom de plume of a voluntaryist, author, father, technology entrepreneur, cyclist, runner, hot yogi, multi-disciplinarian, truther, armchair economist, cryptocurrency enthusiast, and neo-abolitionist who is experimenting with large-scale cult deprogramming. You need to get his book, Government, the Biggest Scam in History, Exposed: How Intergenerational Organized Crime Runs the Government, Media, and Academia. You can also get his Liberator USB. Welcome to Geopolitics and Empire, Etienne.
It is good to be with you and the audience.
Yeah, and we were hanging out in person a while back in Mexico, so it's cool to connect. On my podcast, you were on my TNT last year, like last summer, I think. How time flies. Don't forget. Yeah, I can't forget. Plug my TNT radio show. So, but let's start with your book. There's a lot we can talk about, a lot going on. But just for starters, I really like your term intergenerational organized crime. And that fits well with other researchers who say the same thing in a different way. I was listening recently to James Lindsay, who gave a great lecture calling it a esoteric hermetic cult, which has been ruling us for ages. Others point to European and other dynasties and aristocracy, which have been holding the money and power for ages. And I believe when it comes to the elites, the power center is based on the wealth they possess, which would be, like their class and their common ideology, which I personally view as occult or esoteric. So maybe for starters, the government scam, more on the intergenerational or organized mafia definition that you have.
Absolutely. So the book, Government, the Biggest Scam in History, Exposed, the subtitle is How Intergenerational Organized Crime Runs the Government, the Media, and Academia. And what we've got an organized crime problem, and it goes on for decades, if not centuries. And the thesis of the book is government was never really intended to protect life, liberty, and property. Government is best thought of as a technique to rob and control populations. And you can never, ever, 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 ever have a legitimate government. And what I mean by that is you can't have it logically, you can't have it morally, you can't be bound by a social contract that you didn't sign, you can't delegate rights that you don't possess yourself to a representative or to a government. So if I don't have the ability to take your stuff and your property for charity, if I don't have the ability to make up rules for you myself, then it's impossible logically and morally for me to delegate a right that I don't have myself to a representative or to a government to represent me doing something I don't have the ability to do myself. If my girlfriend and myself can't, vote to rob you because there's two of us and one of you, well, it doesn't matter if there's 3 of us or 10 of us or 330 million of us. There's no magical additional person that makes something, immoral or illogical, moral or logical. So government has been the biggest scam in all of human history. And so it's a way of robbing and controlling populations. Think of it as like tax farming the population, where, it's the mafia model of slavery, where the mafia doesn't own businesses. The mafia just comes around and, once a month and takes their cut, similar to what the government has been doing out of your check. And they've been getting away with it because it's been the government, the media, and academia in on it together. And so on the academia side, it's the mandatory government schools, it's the state-sponsored colleges and universities that are controlling, what a significant portion of the population thinks and understands about government before they're old enough to really evaluate the logic and the morality of the claims. And then on the media side, it's been, since going back to the quote-unquote founding of the country, it has been the government and the media working together to widely control perception and make people think that government is legitimate, desirable, and necessary, even though there's no real ironclad law of the universe that says you have to have a government. But because most people have been brought up in government slipped to them as a religion. That's one of the other kind of secrets of the book, is the government is slipping it to the kids in the school system as a religion, using all the tricks and the techniques of an unethically manipulative religion or a cult to get people to accept having a ruling class. But you don't really need government. Everything the government does would be done better, faster, cheaper by the free market, by real charities, by nonprofits, by mutual aid societies, by co-ops, or likely shouldn't be done at all. And so that's the real, secret of the book. And I use the term intergenerational organized crime because that's the most specific. I don't like Illuminati. I don't like, deep state. I think these are purposefully unhelpful, undescriptive terms. It's intergenerational organized crime. It goes back to monarchy. When monarchy was falling out of favor, they developed democracy to trick the people into thinking that they had a say in who rules them, but always, controlling the outcome of the election through a disparity of campaign funds, through control of the media, through the, ability to, the willingness to use political assassination, bribery, blackmail, and other unethically manipulative techniques. And so they're always going to get the outcome that they want out of the elections. And so it really has been intergenerational organized crime, and it has been the biggest scam in history.
There are 2 points you hit on that I wanted to touch on. One was the U.S. Constitution, and recently, Legal Man tweeted. Some people might be familiar with Legal Man. He's been on this podcast. He's great, and he posed the question. He said the contradiction of how the U.S. is on paper supposed to mean, the U.S. government, the U.S. form of government, the Constitution. It's supposed to mean the smallest limited government possible. Yet you look around today, it's the biggest empire the world has ever seen. So how do you kind of describe we're supposed to have a tiny, small government republic, yet it's the biggest government the world has ever seen? What's sort of your issue? It's in the book, but you take issue with the U.S. Constitution. What's your thought there? A quick shout out to our sponsors, which you can locate via the sponsor page on geopoliticsandempire.com, or whose links are included in every podcast description. I've tried privacy phones in the past, such as Silent Circle's Black Phone, which turned out to be a dud. The best and really only option so far is de-Googling your phone. Now, you can do it yourself, but I've never had the time to figure that out and simply got an Above phone. They sell de-Googled phones that come with a suite of software. They also provide support and a monthly Above privacy suite with many features such as a unique phone number, encryption, email, VPN, and so forth. If you're looking for a private phone, check out Above Phone. Make sure to click on the Above Phone link on geopoliticsandempire.com or via the podcast description so that we can enjoy a commission. Also, check out the Nomos Time Bank at nomos.net, which you can download in Spanish or English to your Apple or Google or de-Googled phone. Nomos allows people in your community to exchange services using time as a currency rather than fiat money. This will be one great way to survive in the coming algorithm ghetto. If you need health insurance, you can talk to my friend James Guzman of the Borderless blog, podcast, and health insurance. He offers free consultations. Simply schedule a time with him over at borderlesshealthinsurance.com. Finally, you can donate directly to Geopolitics and Empire, consult with me, the host, or become a member to join private monthly member Zoom calls where we shoot the breeze discussing world events.
So it's tough because I want to preface this because the Constitution and the Bill of Rights has been sold to the population as the kind of the holy documents of the religion of statism. And so I'm treading, I want to, preface this by helping people understand why they may have this, this affinity and this allegiance to this, these holy documents. Part of the, what I expose in the book is it's a religion. The flag is the artificially indoctrinated holy symbol. The holy documents are the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. That you go to the church school where the teacher, the priest, is going to, teach you, the common prayer of the Pledge of Allegiance. You're going to sing the hymns. you're going to be taken to Mecca, Washington, D.C. in middle school, and you're going to go into the Cathedral of the Capitol, and you're going to go into the temples and see the deities along the Potomac of Jefferson and Lincoln, and it's going to be very hushed, and it's going to be reverent. And if you go through Cub Scouts, Weeblos, Boy Scouts, JROTC, ROTC, you're going to, get into the flag worship and the uniform and how to salute the flag, caress the flag. And when the flag gets old, we don't throw the flag away because it's holy. We have to bury the flag. And the judges are going to wear vestments. And it's going to produce a cult member who's generally pretty, voluntarily willing to tithe a portion of their income and, pay attention to the commandments, the laws of the government, even if they're detrimental to your family's finances or whatever. And so the Constitution, has been sold as something that it really, doesn't. And whether you believe in the Constitution or you don't believe in the Constitution, it didn't work. It wasn't able to limit government in any way, shape, or form. It wasn't able to protect even the basic rights outlined in the Bill of Rights. And the idea, just if because most people were taught that government and the Constitution were legitimate, desirable, and necessary when they were children before they were old enough to evaluate the logic and morality of the claim. But now just kind of, think about it today with the mind of an adult and the idea that, 3 to 4 dozen slave owners, lawyers, politicians can go into a room on a continent of 3 million people. There are about 3 million people living in the continent at the quote unquote founding of the country and write down on a fancy piece of paper that they alone get to make up rules and steal the wealth of others. Well, that doesn't make any sense. That's not logical. That's not moral. That doesn't scale. That has been the biggest scam in history. And again, they've been getting away with it because, they put themselves into the position to be able to slip that to children, before they're old enough to really understand, what's going on. But if you step back and you take a look at the morality of it today, you find that the entire basis of the religion, just is built on, a foundation of sand.
Yeah, I mean, this is thought-provoking stuff, and maybe not everyone will agree with it. But even from my own Christian perspective, there are things that fit. For example, this idea of this all-powerful, collectivist, centralized state that's gonna, prophecy alludes to it, that where it's going to take over control of everything and it's going to force you to do things against your belief. I mean, this crazy secular humanist thing now, where they're just shoving all sorts of insanity down everyone's throat, indoctrinating children. Basically with Satanism and just switching genders and all kinds of insanity. So there's that, and the religious aspect as well. I think you correctly point out in your book, myself as an American, I've noticed it's like a civic religion. I see many Americans more concerned with their political party today and civic activism, as Democrats or Republicans, than, for example, their involvement in spiritual or church matters, and that's really telling. I mean, they all they care about is my guru Trump or my guru Biden or whatever, and they just spend so much time in this world, which I think it's kind of a bit of a waste of time. But also, your book talks about the financial economic sphere. The Federal Reserve, of course, I've got right behind me the Creature from Jekyll Island, sent to me personally by G. Edward Griffin, who took me out to dinner over a decade ago because I was helping him out with some stuff. So I got to meet the man, the myth, the legend. And just before we joined, I saw a short clip about Jeff Bezos and Amazon. And I agree with this. I think Jeff Bezos, his father or grandfather, worked at DARPA. I think he's just a front man, and Amazon was sort of like handed to him, which I think is most of the case for Facebook, which was a DARPA project. And in your book, I didn't know about this. You talk about Amazon A. Mason. And so if you want to tell us more about monopolies, duopolies, oligarchy, and that sort of stuff.
Sure. Well, first of all, why don't I take some people through the book real quick? And so the first thing to know about the book is that I do a lot with visualizations because most people are visual learners and they come to insight much quicker when you show them an image versus just kind of being told about it. And so, just to kind of, finish up on the religion of statism and the fact that it is an indoctrinated kind of pseudo religion. I've got a little quote here from one of the memes in the book, and, is not the state an idol? Is it not like any graven image into which men have read supernatural powers and superhuman capacities? The state can feed us when we are hungry, heal us when we are ill. It can raise wages and lower prices even at the same time. It can educate our children without cost. It can provide against the contingencies of old age. What cannot the state do for us if only we have faith in it? Now, that is a really good, overview. But the problem with the state is, like Margaret Thatcher said, socialism is great until you run out of other people's money. And so, the government is now out of everybody's money. And so, we're now running a $31 trillion, national debt. We're forced to borrow trillions of dollars a year to pay the bills. I don't think that you've got, as many investors that can, kind of afford that to the point of where the Treasury seems to be making straw. The Fed and the Treasury are facilitating straw purchases to make it appear that people still come to the Treasury markets. You've got the dollar depreciating in a double-digit rate, so people are, the creation of all of this money to be able to pay all these bills is causing a superfluous amount of dollars that then compete with the existing dollars in circulation, and then drive up prices as all of these new dollars begin to bid up prices, and so that's why you're seeing double-digit inflation. And so it only can last for so long. Now, you were talking a little bit about Amazon, and I'll just kind of flip through and we'll talk about, some of the one pagers in the book. But, what my thesis is, and before we go to the monopoly, duopoly, and triopoly, I'll just flip forward to Amazon, is that they've been controlling the media in the United States, and they've been controlling it through the monopolization of through the monopolization on the old media side of 6 monopoly companies running hundreds and hundreds of subsidiaries to give everybody the illusion that there's all these different information sources in society. And so what I'm sharing right now is I'm sharing one of the visualizations in the book. And what it is it's a media ownership chart showing 6 companies running hundreds of subsidiaries, because it's how intergenerational organized crime runs the government, the media, and academia. And so you're seeing News Corp, you're seeing General Electric that owns NBC, Disney that owns ABC, Time Warner that owns
Geopolitics.
CNN.
Geopolitics and Empire is not on there, is it?
It is not on there because, thank goodness that there is an authentic alternative media that is developing on the self-directed internet to get us away and begin to free us intellectually from the ability to control perception by controlling every single channel. Now, on the old media side, there's 6 companies running hundreds and hundreds of subsidiaries. And then in the book, one of the things that we do is we also break down, so that was the ownership of the media. But how do you control what people are saying? And so there's a handful of front companies and organizations, the Bilderberg Group, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, and the World Economic Forum, that have maneuvered their members into all of the key reporterships, publisherships, editorships, of dozens and dozens of ostensibly independent media outlets. And so on this visualization, we're looking at Time Magazine, the Times of London, the Washington Post, CNN, CBS, ABC News, Disney, the Daily Beast, the Associated Press, the Wall Street Journal, Fox News, the New York Post, the Sun, the Financial Times of London, Slate Magazine, Politico, Forbes, the list, Sky News, the list goes on and on. And so, Jeffrey Epstein was a member of these three organizations. And so what I'm doing, a lot of what I'm doing with the book is I'm using visualization to make something that was invisible now visible through visualization. And so if you didn't understand that all of these key editors and reporters and publishers are all together, tied together, under three organizations that Jeffrey Epstein was a member of, okay, and ought to be the poster boy for the Bilderberg Group, the Council on Foreign Relations, and the Trilateral Commission, then you may wonder, well, if they're lying about the COVID, could all of the editors and publishers be in on it? And then, you see this visualization, you realize, holy crap, they're all in on it. Someone's giving them their marching orders, and this appears to be the front organizations that are doing it. These organizations, provide the ability to have private meetings and secure meeting facilities around the world on a regular basis. The WEF is another example. And so now you can begin to see the structure of intergenerational organized crimes media control system and understand how they've been controlling perception by, promoting certain people and ideas while hiding, other people and ideas. Now, that was the old school press. I want to talk about, because you brought up Amazon, and so one of the cases that we make in the book is that Amazon is, part of what we call the new media, and the new media is 3 to 5 dozen kind of new media, internet search engine companies, search engines, social media discuss that does comments on thousands of websites, Wikipedia, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Snopes, Meetup, others, Amazon, A Mason. And so, our thesis is that you can get anything you want from a Mason in 2 days with free shipping, but you shouldn't if you can avoid it. And so what we believe is that the DARPA internet, which, by the way, I've got network diagrams, and many people don't understand this, but in 1974, there were dozens and dozens of universities and military research labs connected to the internet in 1974. And so the military and the government had access to, control of, and an understanding of how the internet was going to develop for decades before they released it to the public. And so the thesis is that they'd already figured out, where they needed to make over investments and to give certain firms a head start to be able to consolidate, that portion of the information food chain. So the name of the game is we're controlling perception widely. And so we're going to attract all of the eyeballs that we can attract, and we're going to control what they see, and we're going to fund certain companies to dominate social media, search, books, book reviews, things like that. And so I'm going to just kind of take your audience through some of the evidence that Amazon is part of this system and is widely controlling perception on the DARPA internet, the same way that CIA Google has been caught widely controlling perception. CIA Facebook has been caught widely controlling perception, and FBI Twitter, where it came out that the fact checkers and the moderators at Twitter were all ex-FBI. the same way it came out at Facebook that all the moderators and fact checkers at Facebook were ex-CIA. So could Amazon be doing the exact same thing? And so let's take a look at some of the evidence for that. So a lot of people don't realize, but over a decade ago, Amazon got caught beta testing the ability to digitally burn books on their Kindle and their Fire ebook platforms. And when I say digitally burn books, I mean remotely delete books that people have bought. I think the ultimate goal with the Kindle and the Fire and the e-readers is to be able to change history, to be able to change perception, to be able to delete some books or delete words out of books or delete, images out of books, or to change the words in books in the future. And so the beta test for that was over a decade ago when Amazon remotely deleted the book 1984 off of everyone's Kindle that had purchased it. Now, if you remember your George Orwell in the book 1984, the protagonist, Winston Smith, his job is he works in the Ministry of Information and he makes things go down the memory hole. So if you wanted to have a funny ha-ha on the people and you wanted to remotely test digitally burning books in the future, then what funnier book to make go down the memory hole than the book 1984 that brought everybody the idea of the memory hole?
Let me just add. There's a recent story about just from this weekend from the Telegraph talking about rewriting. I don't even know this guy. Some writer Roald Dahl, and hundreds of changes are being made to his books or stories or poems. I think they're also using AI to suit a new sensitive generation. And just to add that quote from Orwell. Orwell says, quote, "Every record has been destroyed or falsified. Every book rewritten. Every date has been altered. The process is continuing day by day. History has stopped. Nothing exists except an endless present in which the party is always right." End quote. So we just saw this example this weekend.
Absolutely. And so if you control the present, then you control the future. And so the ability to widely control perception is the most, powerful weapon in the U.S. arsenal. And Amazon is a big part of that. Not only do you have the ability to digitally, burn books on their platform, but they've been caught, censoring books off of the website. So you can't buy books exposing the Sandy Hook hoax, aspects of 9/11 truth and what happened on 9/11, engineered mass migration in Europe, and other, government criminality. They've been caught censoring book reviews, including negative reviews of Hillary Clinton's book, What Happened. And so in that case, they just knocked off everything that was a 3, 2, or 1-star review. They just deleted all the 3, 2, and 1-star reviews to give it a 5-star rating on the platform. Amazon Prime removed the award-winning documentary Vaxxed, which exposes that the CDC has been lying about vaccines causing autism, and other vaccine awareness videos, including Shoot 'em Up, the truth about vaccines and man-made epidemic. They've also been caught censoring, flipping the script when parents fight back against harmfulness of chemotherapy for kids. Root causes, the harmfulness of root canals, behind the fear, the hidden story of HIV, talking about the scam of HIV that was kind of the precursor to the scam of the COVID. The Amazon Prime and Netflix, with their $50 million deal with the Obamas, are the prime outlets for over 800 plus movies and 1,000 television shows where the Department of Defense or the intelligence agency have had a hand in the final product that came out. And so there's a brand new documentary called Theaters of War. It's now thousands of movies and television shows since I published this. They've uncovered more evidence of Department of Defense and the intelligence agencies having script control, making the government the hero, making it's always, if you think about what you can get on Amazon Prime and Netflix, the government's the hero, whether it's the CIA agent, the FBI agent, the military, the president of the United States flying fighter jets to protect the country against invading aliens. This, media system has been getting pumped out there by Amazon Prime. Now, again, a lot of people don't understand this, but Amazon has a $600 million deal with the intelligence agencies for secure cloud services, and other agencies spend more than $47 million a year for cloud services, and that number is a couple of years old. Supposedly, they lost a $10 billion Defense Department contract for the Jedi War Cloud, but they are appealing the decision, so Amazon's going to get more, government money. Amazon Echo and Alexa spy on the population in their homes, and the company's Ring doorbell cameras have been quietly wired into over 2,000 police departments. So the Ring doorbell cameras, which if the government had put up a network of surveillance cameras in, kind of suburban neighborhoods to spy on the population probably would have objected. Hold on. The population probably would have objected, but because they tricked the population into installing those themselves, and then they just went around in the background and wired those cameras into police departments and Homeland Security fusion centers. And then finally, the Amazon Key system puts a camera in your house covering everybody coming and going in your front door and lets them remotely unlock the door. Now, finally, they're engaged in economic warfare against their own customers and the population. And so the company's third-party marketplace represents millions of individual sellers who sell on the Amason platform. And they began competing with their own customers in 2009 with their own private label brands. As of August of 2019, they had 135 private label brands. I should have probably updated that in the brand new 5th edition, but it is an amazing amount. So anything that is selling well on Amazon, they're going to start their own version, and they're going to compete with their own customers in a kind of of economic warfare. And so that head start that they had in IP technology, I think they were given a head start of, knowing, what was going to be happen. DARPA took, the grandson of one of their founders, and they put him as the head of the company. They gave it a funny name that essentially spells A Mason. All you got to do is spin the Z and it spells A Mason. And they put a number of other Masonic symbolism into their logos and others, as you can see here, on the screen. But again, you can get anything you want from a Mason in 2 days with free shipping, but you should avoid doing business with organized crime if you can. And so that is some of what we reveal about Amazon. And now let's talk about, what that dynamic, produces in the case of monopolies, duopolies, and triopolies, because that's a great example of a monopoly. And so this is another one-pager from the book. I call this one Monopoly, Duopoly, and Triopoly: Control of Society Through Monopolization. And at the top of the food chain, it's the banks. And the banks have been given the ability to create money out of thin air using a technique called fractional reserve banking. And the kind of the short version of the scam is when you go to a bank, you're not borrowing and you get a loan or a mortgage. They're not loaning you, other depositors' money. They just, click the keys and click the mouse and boom, they credit your account with digital dollars. And these digital dollars then begin competing with all of the other dollars that are out there. So in addition, from the unfairness of you having to, work and pay, back hundreds and hundreds of $1,000s in interest on a loan that was created out of thin air, the whole process is inflationary. and stealing the value out of everybody else's money. And one of the examples I like to give is, just imagine you're playing Monopoly, and the banker is cheating, and the banker is reaching under the table and grabbing $500 bills when nobody's looking. Well, at the end of the game, who owns everything on the board and who are renters and debtors? And so that's really the situation that we're under, right now, is that these banks are providing companies like Amazon, like others, unlimited capital to be able to buy up and consolidate their own industries in a system that is predatory and kind of putting honest companies that aren't cheating, that don't have unlimited access to capital, out of business, so that we're ultimately ruled by this organized crime system. Now, most people support, one of the reasons that many people support government is that they think that government is going to keep them safe from monopolies. But it just simply isn't the case. You don't get monopolies in a free market. You may have some firms that are able to achieve a dominant market position for a small amount of time. But in a free market, the way that you get a dominant market position is by satisfying the customer, by having them, by making it better, faster, and cheaper. And that's how you win market share in a free, in a free economy. A harmful monopoly is one that has the ability to raise prices and run for years with bad service, where you have no options. And the only place that you get these harmful monopolies is government. And so let's just kind of break down a couple of those harmful monopolies that get imposed on us. Number one, we can start with the roads. The roads is something the government says that only they can, produce, and that, that only they have the ability to do the roads, even though there were roads before there was government. But 43% of U.S. roadways are in poor, mediocre condition. The government claims a monopoly on armed protective services that they call the police, and they steal more than all private criminals combined through civil asset forfeiture. They regularly violate natural law, human rights, and they routinely pay themselves $300,000 plus, $350,000 plus in salaries at the sheriff and chief level in U.S. cities and counties. The Defense Department, the organized crime military, the Pentagon can't account for over $35 trillion. And they lost $6 to $8 billion to waste and fraud in Iraq. The government has a monopoly on passenger rail service in the United States. And Amtrak has lost money every single year since its inceptions, and claims that it lost almost $1 billion in food and beverage alone in a decade. It cost the taxpayers $4.1 billion in 2020. In my youth, I worked at one of the big four think tanks in Washington, D.C. We actually did a study where we figured out that if the government shut down Amtrak completely, this was decades ago, but like 20 years ago, but at that time, if the government had shut down Amtrak completely and just bought every single person that was using Amtrak a coach class airline ticket, the government would save money. The Postal Service has lost multi-billion-dollar losses every year for the past 15 years, totaling over $96.7 billion that they've lost money at. The mandatory government schools, the U.S. spends more globally on education by far than the U.K., Germany, France, Canada, and Australia combined, and ranks 9th in science and 10th in math. I could go on, but I think you get the idea. You don't really get monopolies except through government, and that's the kind of harmful monopoly that you have. Now, this organized crime system that's creating money out of thin air and buying the world with their little paper tickets, well, if they only left one company standing, then it would be obvious to everybody what was going on. So typically what they do is they leave two. And so here are some examples. You've got, a choice, quote unquote, in AMD or Intel for GPU computer chips. You have a choice between Walmart and Target for retail goods. Bulk retail goods, you've got Costco and Sam's Club. Hardware, you've got Lowe's and Home Depot. Office supplies, you've got Staples or Office Depot. Sporting goods, you got Dick's or Sports Authority. Soft drinks, you got Coke or Pepsi. Shipping, FedEx or UPS. Payments, Visa or MasterCard. Politics, Democrats or Republicans. We're going to leave two companies standing where typically the ownership percentage is owned by either BlackRock, Vanguard, or both. And so it seems that BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street and some of these other private equity firms are managing and holding the ownership percentage in companies that have been bought up by fractional reserve dollars created out of thin air. The World Economic Forum is organizing the C-level executives of the companies that have been bought up by fractional reserve dollars created out of thin air, and organizing the media puppets and the nonprofits that those companies fund and advertise in as well. And so that's where the money's going. That's how the scam works. Now, on the media side,
I just wanted to add, I just had an epiphany as you were talking about that. And what I like about your book is the visuals. So you really, when you read a traditional book, there's an advantage to having these visuals. And, one of my focuses is world government, globalism, global governance, and trying to square how they're going to do it. I mean, Elon Musk was beamed into the World Government Summit recently openly saying, I don't think world government is going to work, like implying, you guys are trying to do it. And I think it's this same model where we see this talk now. We've been in this unipolar American globalist empire system, and there's all this talk now about bipolar world, multipolar world. And I think it's that same principle. If we had, and I've been saying this, if you have this sort of unipolar American world government, it's going to be too obvious. People are going to reject it. But if you bring this bipolar, multipolar system where it's US and Europe and Eurasia, there's your duopoly right there. And it's going to be the same. And that's going to be the world government. That's going to be that control system. So I think it's very useful, your visuals.
That is a really excellent point. And then that way you can play the two off against each other. And so one threatens the other threatens it. And so then you drive those populations, into the bosom of government to protect them from these manufactured enemies, where in both cases, whether it's Russia, China, they're all using the technique of government to rob and control their populations. And I believe, they're in complete lockstep alignment at the top of the food chain. They're just menacing their own populations with the other governments to try so that they clamor for security. Now, how do you do that? You control the information that they receive, and so now we're going to get into some triopolies. But in the media, it would be kind of obvious if there were only two, and so they typically leave three. But we've got, newspapers of record. You've got the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, TV networks. You've got NBC, ABC, CBS, streaming platforms. You've got Amazon, Netflix, and Disney, book sales and manipulation of reviews. You've got Amazon, Books A Million, and Barnes Noble, cable and broadband providers. You've got Comcast, Time Warner, and Cox. Operating systems, you've got Microsoft, Apple, or Android. Telecom, you've got Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. Google, search engines, you've got Google, Yahoo, and Bing. And news networks, you've got CNN, Fox, and MSNBC. And so you've got, almost every major, control of perception platform has got either the CFR, Council on Foreign Relations, the CIA, the FBI, NSA, able to wiretap telecom through CALIA, the Communications Assistant for Law Enforcement Act. You've got the NSA inside of the major operating systems with backdoors that came out in the Edward Snowden leaks, where they openly mocked Apple users for giving them their data on the Apple platform, is one example. And as we break down in the book, whether it's CNN, Fox, MSNBC, NBC, CBS, you've got the CIA as the key commentators, anchors, news people, all have a background in the CIA. A lot of people don't realize Anderson Cooper was a 2-year CIA intern before he began, traveling around the world for Channel One. They're widely controlling perception by controlling the people that get to talk about politics and government events on the news networks. And they're controlling what is read in the newspapers of record by having their membership organized in the Council on Foreign Relations, the World Economic Forum, the Bilderberg Group, or the Trilateral Commission. And so that has been the name of the game, and I'm exposing it by making it easy to understand, using visualization to make what was invisible now visible. And the book is really designed to wake up your friends, your family, your colleagues as to how the system works. Most people are visual learners. They come to insight much quicker when you show them information. And so that's really what the book is designed to do.
And maybe to get your thoughts on what to do and solutions. And this isn't, there's no book you can write, here are the solutions. It's always evolving. We were both at the Greater Reset last month, and solutions are presented there, not just through the conference speakers, but the different organizations that came. And I'll also think about what you're talking about, the Amazon Ring, and how we've just I can't believe even how many Mexicans here. It's like they're putting up Ring, and I'm like, you guys are crazy. You're lapping up this Brave New World surveillance state. You've got no idea what you're doing or participating in. And now they're pushing CBDCs. We saw in Nigeria they tried to push the digital currency, which everyone rejected. So then the second step was like, hey, guess what? We're gonna just force it on you. We're no more cash in the banks. And then everyone has to use the CBDC, which I call the algorithm ghetto. So, and you're in your book, you talk about solutions. You give, different resources when it comes to crypto. A community is important. But what thoughts do you have when it comes to, what do we do? How do we prepare? I find the cashless society is sort of going to be inevitable. So I'm just kind of like thinking of how I'm going to survive in it. So your thoughts on, what to do and some solutions.
Yeah. So with respect to the cashless society, the number one thing you can do is you can use cash. And so it's one of the absolute easiest ways to fight against the system, especially when you're doing business with local, businesses, restaurants, the farmers market, other, business owners that can then, keep that cash, not have to report it to the organized crime government. And so that is a form of resistance called counter economics. And essentially counter economics is doing everything that you can to throw sand into the gears anytime you can. And the easiest thing for people to do is to vote with their dollars every single day. Don't cancel your subscription to Netflix, cancel your subscription to Paramount, cancel your subscription to these companies that are lying and propagandizing you. Don't patronize their movies. Don't patronize their television programs. Unplug yourself from this control of perception system. When you're using cash, every time that you use cash, you're keeping 2 to 3% out of the hands of the banks and the credit card payment processors. And then that goes a long way, so that if the store owner then takes that, let's say $50 payment in cash and goes and spends it someplace else's cash, well, now you've kept out 6%, 4 to 6% out of the banking system. And so these are some of the easiest ways to resist. If you didn't know that the government was evil and intergenerational organized crime, and you're still working for the government, I hate to be the one to break it to you. There's no other way to sugarcoat it. You got to quit. you can't be working for organized crime. If you can't leave just now, then throw sand into the gears, sabotage the government's ability to track, trace, and control peaceful people any way you can. And if you're in the government school system, then teach the kids in your charge the truth about the system. Don't just tell them that government is legitimate, desirable, and necessary. Don't just teach out of the government's textbook. Be honest with the kids in your charge and explain to them the illegitimacy and criminality of the government. Use cryptocurrencies. So cryptocurrency is another form of counter economics where you're moving some of your dollars into, number one, you're protecting yourself with non-dollar denominated assets. So if there's a dollar collapse or there's a dollar crisis or there is a haircut or a devaluation, not all of your money is in dollars. It's in Bitcoin Cash or Epic Cash or Monero or, privacy centric currencies that aren't, tracking you on a public blockchain like Bitcoin is. Go to the farmer's market every single week and do business with the farmers in your community so that you have a relationship with that farmer in case there is a dollar devaluation or a collapse. Move some of your money into physical gold and silver, which keeps you out of the dollar denominated system and also gives you, again, diversifies you out of just, US dollars into commodity money. I like silver better than I like gold. It's got more uses in manufacturing, more patents are granted on the use of silver than any other metal, every single year. It's an antimicrobial. It's the world's most conductive metal. It's the world's most reflective metal. So it's got a lot of uses in industry. So it's always going to be valuable. Support the alternative media using bitbacker.io or Patreon. Take that money you were spending on Amazon Prime or on Paramount streaming, and you can take that exact same amount of money and you can support 12 plus, media creators that are telling the truth. And even if that, just like if it's $2 a month or $5 a month or whatever it is, the fact that the developing alternative media can count on that steady donation, that is really what's allowing us to build platforms on the self-directed internet that are now competing with the control of perception, organized crime system. And so these are just a few of the ways that you can fight back and get yourself out of this control of perception system.
I would scratch Patreon though, because I got banned from Geopolitics and Empire got banned from Patreon in 2021, but we got Subscribestar. And as you say, even $1 a month is a big help. So if you can help out Geopolitics and Empire, $1 a month on Subscribestar or elsewhere. And just maybe one more point for me is interesting, alt media, because in your book you talk about as well controlled opposition. And I myself, I'm not so confident to say this or that person is controlled opposition, because sometimes it's unwitting, right? There are people who start out doing alternative media, and it's kind of like game theory where the powers that be behind the scenes can sort of invisibly nudge some of these alt media folks in certain directions. It's kind of like, a game theory where they offer money or incentives, and that drives some of these bigger alt media folks in certain directions, which they wouldn't otherwise go. Some of these more popular folks used to be more edgy, more cutting edge, and over time they've become more kind of mainstream. But then, of course, there are real like undercover agents, or they can send. You could have a genuine alt media figure, and unbeknownst to them, they've got undercover feds working at their organizations. And so maybe some of your thoughts on alt media, and then you've got people just spring up out of nowhere, fully well-funded, well-oiled machines that just jump from 0 subscribers to a million, and that just kind of has me scratching my head. Where some of us have been doing this for so long,
You mean Stu Peters?
Yeah, I mean that's one example, and so yeah. And any thoughts on because I'm
so the most valuable weapon in the United States arsenal is control of perception. Can we control the information that the population receives to be able to program them like a computer? And so the human brain is a computer. Garbage in equals garbage out. And so people are going to get their news from the alternate people that have realized how the organized crime control perception system works are now actively looking for the authentic voices of the developing alternative media. And so, one of the, I think it was Lenin famously said, the best way to control the opposition is to lead it ourselves. And so unfortunately, one of the problems that we have to deal with as the truth movement and as the liberty movement is, what's known as controlled opposition. So it's media figures that are artificially promoted, that have their platform promoted on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and others at the same time that authentic voices are being demonetized, shadow banned, deplatformed, having their PayPals and, bank accounts taken away, other aspects of censorship like that. And so if you're not familiar that that's going on, I cover, a whole bunch in the, in the book that I believe are kind of, untrustworthy, platforms. But just be aware that that's going on and that, people are competing for your attention. And if you're not 100% sure that they are authentic, then you should definitely move to some of the authentic voices that we recommend, in the book.
All right. And maybe, I guess, last topic, just real quick, your thoughts on COVID, because you said you couldn't fit it into the current book because it's already kind of packed and you're producing another book on COVID. And, my view is that it was a military intelligence operation, COVID, and basically to advance a lot of the stuff you're already talking about and to bring about it, a technocratic global government, as this slide that you're showing, talks about eugenics, that's also very much to do with it. So, quick thoughts on COVID.
Sure. So my goal when I started the 5th edition of the book was to bring the book into the age of COVID. And so the book was actually almost a year late in getting out because I wrote about 70% of a new book entitled, and before I realized that it wasn't going to fit in the 5th edition. And so what I did is I updated everything that could be updated in the 5th edition. I added new one-pagers, new memes, cleaned up a lot of the, made everything a little bit more high res. We now have a hardcover edition. We now have a new and improved Liberator. And so, but I took the majority of the work done on COVID and put it into an article that you can get on our Liberator flash drive called "Solving COVID: The COVID-19 Eugenics and Vaccine Drug Scam Timeline." And I came to the exact conclusion that you did, that COVID was the exact same people that are, controlling perception use that control perception system to make it look like that there was a pandemic. And so, the upcoming book will be called "Solving COVID: How Eugenics-Centered Organized Crime Engineered a Fake Pandemic to Steal Trillions and Murder Millions." And so if you're not familiar with eugenics, it's the idea that you can improve society by getting rid of the useless eaters. There has been a huge, belief that the world is overpopulated. I don't believe that it is. And I think it was headed to a stable population and would have already probably achieved it if this organized crime system wasn't debilitating the population with fluoride and aspartame and BPA and BPS and recombinant bovine growth hormone and milk and glyphosated wheat and refined grains, glutamates and everything else that is being put into the food supply. But in essence, they engineered the reason to hand trillions of dollars to private banks, private companies in the form of bailouts, in the form of stimulus. And that was the reason for the COVID. I think it was also the treasury market was starting to fall apart at the seams. And so they needed a reason for the Fed to intervene in the treasury market, which it's forbidden by the Federal Reserve Act. So the Fed can't buy treasuries at the auctions except in an emergency. So they engineered an emergency because people weren't coming to the auctions. But now, if you wanted to understand what my thinking is on the COVID, you can find this at either the artofliberty.substack.com, where we made the Solving COVID an article on the Substack, or you can get this PDF version of that breaks down the entire entire timeline of eugenics, the Rockefeller Foundation, the other vaccine and drug scams, ranging. It's almost been the exact same thing. It's been we're going to menace the population with a pandemic. We're going to sell them a drug that is going to hurt them. The drug that we push at them is going to make things worse and appear to make the problem, verify the problem. But we break down who's who, and you can either get it on the Liberator or you can get it at our Substack at artofliberty.substack.com. But I agree with you 100%. This was a manufactured, engineered event. The Liberator is a credit card size flash drive that we back up everything on the book and include the we include the one more time. There you go.
Wait, okay, here we go. Yeah, here it is.
So we include the PDF version and the EPUB version of the book on this little credit card size flash drive, along with all of the documentaries and the short videos that are disappearing off of the internet and off of YouTube. We've got that on this credit card size flash drive that you can keep in your wallet. And then when you're at a friend's house, you can just say, hey, here's what's going on. And you're free to copy it. You're free to make your own Liberators. People are doing that. They're taking the Liberator, buying low cost flash drives off of eBay, and handing out dozens of Liberators to their friends and colleagues. We make it easy to resist. We make it easy to fight back. You can find out more at government-scam.com. And you can actually see everything and download everything for free at government-scam.com/liberator. And you can actually see what's on there before you buy it. It takes forever if you're downloading them one at a time. Unless you're on a university level connection, you're not going to be able to download the whole thing in one shot. It's just too big. And so it's much easier just to buy a copy and then copy it for friends with low cost drives that you get off of eBay. But that's how we make it easy to resist this organized crime system.
You've also made it easy to red pill your friends. Whip it out of your wallet and bam. All of your links will be in the description, as you said, government-scam.com and linktree/Art of Liberty. I think any final thought then for us as we head into this crazy, brave new world?
No, I mean that's pretty much it. I think I think we're going to win this thing. I'm very much an optimist. I don't think there's any way that you can stop the signal in the information age, and we don't have to win everybody. We've only really got to win the intelligentsia and the kind of the entrepreneurs and the business executives and the professoriate and the independent bloggers, vloggers, YouTube, personalities, things like that. Once the intelligentsia gets it, then the rest of society is going to, kind of fall in line behind them. And so I think we're already on the way there. There's just simply no way to keep this under wraps in the information age. And so I'm very, very optimistic about our future.
Good, because I need more. optimism. Hopefully I see you again at another conference one of these days, or at the next greater reset. And thank you for being on Geopolitics and Empire.
It's been a pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed this Geopolitics and Empire podcast. The website is geopoliticsandempire.com, and I encourage you to sign up for the free email list that goes out with each podcast and every weekend with a collection of news headlines. The newsletter and website are our last lines of defense. We're being censored and deplatformed. It's nearly impossible to find Geopolitics and Empire on the Google search engine. We've been blacklisted. YouTube frequently takes down our videos with strikes. Facebook restricts our page. Reddit and Twitter take down posts. And after the Associated Press mentioned Geopolitics and Empire in a 2021 article co-written with NATO, our Patreon account was terminated. Vimeo also terminated our Pro account. The best free way to help Geopolitics and Empire is to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or elsewhere and subscribe to all of our media channels. You can find the video broadcast now on 5 platforms: Odyssey, Rockfin, Rumble, BitChute, and Brighteon. You can find the audio broadcast on the podcast ecosystem: SoundCloud, Apple, Spotify, and so on. My current favorite social media channels are Twitter and Telegram, but you can also find us on Gab, MeWe, Minds, Float, VK, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Finally, Geopolitics and Empire is in dire need of funding to continue. You can leave a donation, purchase a consultation with the host, or become a member to receive additional benefits. We also produce a weekly broadcast called Dissident Thinker for members and Rockfin subscribers only. We will continue to fight the good fight come hell or high water. Thank you for listening.